What's up, guys? Well, welcome to today's live training. Today is all about how to set up your fat loss program. And this is more about goal setting. So, how to set up your goals for your fat loss setting. So I am super pumped about today's session because this is one of the sessions that I absolutely love to do with my clients. We go through a very intense goal setting session one time a year, sometimes twice a year. And this is one of my favorite things to do because it gets you super crystal clear on exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So in today's session, we're going to cover basically three areas. We're going to cover the most common mistakes that people make when setting up or when starting a fat loss program. Okay. We can even say when starting goals. Okay. Most common mistakes that people make when creating goals. We're going to talk about what you need to know before starting your goal setting process. And then finally, I'm going to create a step-by-step process on how you can create really attainable, unbelievable goals that you are more likely to achieve than ever before in your life. Okay. And then I got some really good bonus tips at the very end, 3 bonus tips. If we have time to do it, we'll go into those bonus tips that really will take this goal setting to an entirely different level. Okay. So that's what we're going to cover today. Let's go ahead and jump right into the first part of this section. Okay. So let's talk about some of the most common mistakes that people make when they go in creating goals. Okay. Now, common mistake number 1 is most people create very vague, and I call them descriptive goals. Okay. They create very vague or descriptive goals, and that's all they ever do. Right. So I might ask somebody, hey, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? Okay. They say, oh, I just want to lose weight. I want to tone up. I want to firm up. I want to lose some inches in my waist. I want to feel better about myself, and I want to have more energy, right? These are very vague and very descriptive goals. Now, it's important to have descriptive goals, but a lot of people just stop there, okay? Now, we've all heard of the SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, right? They all have to have a time on it. So a lot of people do not create SMART goals. They just say what they want. Okay. And there is a place, like I said, for descriptive goals. And so common mistake number 1 is not really creating SMART goals and only staying with descriptive goals. Okay. Common mistake number 2 is not writing your goals down. Okay. If you cannot see it and you are not writing it down, or you're not inputting it into a computer, or maybe your coach isn't inputting into a computer, or whatever it is. Okay. Then the likelihood of you achieving those goals isn't very likely at all. Okay. There is a research study out there, and you guys can go look for it, of the likelihood of somebody achieving their goals if they write down their goals. When they write it down, the likelihood just goes through the roof. Okay. So not writing down their goals is another common mistake. Okay. Common mistake number 3 is people not setting realistic goals. Okay. I hear all the time. In fact, I just had somebody not too long ago that said that they wanted to lose, it was like 40 pounds of fat that they were trying to lose, and they were trying to do it in less than 6 months. Okay. Now, that can happen. Okay. And it's not so much unrealistic, but he added the fact that he also wanted to live a healthy lifestyle, and he didn't want to be restricted from food. And so that is a very unrealistic goal when you say, I want to lose this massive amount of fat, but I want to do it to where I'm able to go on vacation and I'm not restricted and I don't have to count calories and I can just live free. Okay. That's not very realistic at all. Okay. And as we talked about before, those are 2 different goals, right? If you want to lose fat, that's one goal. If you want to learn to make it a lifestyle, that's a completely different goal. Okay. There are 2 different ways to go about doing those. Okay. And so a lot of people don't create realistic goals. Okay. They have these things that they're, it's out of this world. There's no way it's going to happen. So they're just setting themselves up for failure. Now, that's if they even create, a real goal. Okay. Number 4 common mistake is people don't create measurable goals. Okay. Like, how can you say, hey, I want more energy? Okay. How do you measure that? Okay. You need to know how to be able to measure that, right? I want to feel better. Well, how do you measure that? Okay. If you don't measure it and it just stays in that description form, it's going to be really hard to know if you really ever achieved it or not. Okay. I'll tell you a funny story. Just recently, I started working with a client, And she went through her first month of training with me. And every client that I have, we do a goal assessment, and I always do. I understand what direction that they want to go, and so I let them purposely write down very generic goals. Okay. So she wrote very generic goals. I want to lose weight. I want to tone up. I want to firm, things like that. But she didn't really write any measurable goals. Okay. So then what happens is she comes in the next month and she does phenomenal. Okay. She loses, I don't know, 3 or 4 pounds of fat. She gains about a pound of muscle, and she's eating more food than she's ever eaten in her life. Okay. And so, I was like, man, you should be really happy right now. And she was just not sure how to feel. And I said, well, let's pull up your assessment and let's look at what you said your goals were. And then it said, I want to lose fat and I want to gain muscle, right? That was what her goals said. And I said, hey, listen, you achieved your goals. You lost fat and you gained muscle. So maybe we should stop working together today. Okay. And she's like, well, no, I have more to go. I have more to go. And I was like, well, that's why I'm having this conversation, because even though you wrote these goals and you said you wanted to accomplish this, it wasn't good enough. So if you don't have measurable goals, number one, you'll achieve those goals because they're kind of vague, right? You'll achieve them, but you won't really be happy when you're there, or you'll achieve them and you won't really know you are there because you didn't really write it down of where you want it to be. Okay. So you got to make sure you create measurable goals. That's extremely important. Now, if she would have said, hey, Aaron, I want to lose 10 pounds of fat and I want to gain 10 pounds of muscle. Okay. She would have came in month one and she would have saw, hey, I lost 3 pounds of fat. Now I'm not where I need to be, but I know I'm on the right track. Okay. But because she didn't create those measurable goals, according to the way she wrote it, she accomplished her goals and she should stop working with me. But in her heart, she knew that that's not really where she wanted to be. So we had to sit down and we say, okay, let's create these measurable goals. Where are you really trying to be with fat mass? Where are you really trying to be with muscle mass? And then we sat down and really created those very specific measurable goals. Okay. All right, cool. Now, creating crystal clear goals is what this is all about. Okay. Now, here's the thing. If you don't create crystal clear goals, okay, measurable, realistic, attainable, right, all of that stuff, if you do not get crystal clear on exactly what you're creating, you literally have no purpose. You have no reason to push through. Okay. You're just doing it to lose weight. Okay. But when you can create a super crystal clear goal, you know exactly, hey, I'm trying to lose 15 pounds of fat. I'm trying to lose 20 pounds of fat, whatever the thing is. Okay. If you can really create that crystal clear goal, okay, when times get tough, it is so much easier to bust through those barriers. It is so much easier to remember, hey, this is my purpose. This is my goal. This is why I'm doing this. Okay. If you create vague and general goals, you will have very lackluster effort to break through your barriers. Okay. Your goal setting process is what's allowing you, it's setting you up to bust through barriers when times get tough throughout your journey, because it will get tough throughout your journey. And if you just have, oh, I just want to lose weight. Oh, I just want to feel better. Those aren't strong enough. Those don't inspire you to continue to move forward. Okay. So you've got to create these super crystal clear goals. You've got to go through this process. Okay. Now, one of the other common mistakes that I see people make is not creating a deadline. Okay. Or if they do create a deadline, it becomes this moving target. Okay. They might say, hey, my deadline is, summertime, right? At summertime, I want to look like this, right? It's fall's coming up. So it's like, oh, my deadline is Halloween. Okay. And they may create a deadline. Okay. But sometimes they'll like, oh, I didn't really work out hard this month. So let me push it back another month. And let's just say Thanksgiving, right? And then, Thanksgiving was hard. It was tough. So let me push it back to Christmas because I want to look good for Christmas. And then by that time, they're like, I'll just go ahead and start in January. Okay. I'm sure so many of y'all have done that, right? So a common mistake is like 1A, or I should say 6A and 6B is 6A is not creating a deadline. Okay. Not saying anything. So I just want to lose 20 pounds and that's it, right? You're not saying when you want to do it. Okay. By when you want to do it. Okay. Or 6B is that it becomes this moving target and you just continue to move it because you had a bad month. Okay. When you create that deadline, you've got to let it stick there. You cannot move it. You got to let it stick. Okay. And then one of the biggest common mistakes that I see people make when they're creating their goals is they don't even know where they're starting from. They don't even know their true starting point. Okay. Now, I know I've talked about this before, and I'm going to use this analogy until you start using it and you start telling everybody about this analogy. Okay. If you want to achieve something, okay, with your body, it is like a GPS. Okay. You open up your GPS and it finds your blue dot. Okay. That is your starting point. That GPS is telling you exactly where you are starting. Okay. Which we're going to talk about your starting point here in a second. So once you know your true starting point, okay, then it's really easy to create your goal, your final destination of where you want to be. And once you have those 2 points, then it's really easy to create a step-by-step plan to help you get there. Okay. But if all you have is your final destination, and I'm sure you've done it before, you opened up your GPS and it cannot find your blue dot because you don't have cell phone signal. Okay. You have no idea how to get to where you're going. Okay. You need both. You need your starting point and you need your goals. Okay. So, one of the biggest common mistakes I see is people not knowing their starting point when they're creating their goals. All right. So, now let's talk about the first step in knowing your goals. I just talked about it, knowing your starting point. Okay. Now, if you're taking notes, I want you to write these down because these are stone cold locks. Okay. This is what you need to know about your starting point when you are creating your goals. Okay. You need to know this part right here. Okay. So you got to know your starting point for the reasons why I already explained. Okay. So what are the things that you truly need to know? You need to know your weight. Okay. You need to know your body fat percentage. Okay. You need to be able to do your calculations and calculate how many pounds of fat mass you have on you. Okay. You need to calculate how many pounds of lean body mass you have on you. Okay. And you got to do your circumference measurements. Okay. You got to do your waist circumference, your hip circumference. Okay. Really, where you want to do your circumference measurements is where you store the most fat. Those are the most important ones. Okay. If you're in a fat loss program, the major circumference measurements that you want to measure are the areas that you store fat. So if you're a female and you store all of your fat in your waist, hips, and thighs, okay, make sure you always get those circumference measurements. Okay. If you're male and you store all of your weight in your waist and in your chest, okay, well, then that's what you should measure as well. Okay. So if you just want to take a overall approach, which is what I do for all of my clients, I look at everything. I don't just look at, where you store the fat the most. I look at everything. So you want to do your shoulders, you want to do your biceps, you want to do your waist, your hips, your thigh, your calf. Okay. You want to do all of that. And if you can do all of those circumference measurements and you know your starting point, okay, then you'll know exactly where you need to go. Okay. That was really, really, really simple. Okay. And that's it. Know your starting point, know those exact measurements. Okay. Weight, body fat percentage, pounds of fat mass, pounds of lean body mass, all of your circumference measurements, your waist, your hips, your chest, your thigh, your shoulder, your calves, your biceps. Okay. Know those measurements, and that's your starting point. Okay. Perfect. Now let's get into the goal setting process, the step-by-step process. Okay. And I'm actually going to show you, I'm going to give you an example of every step of this. Okay. Of somebody that I actually did in real life. Okay. And I did this session with them in real life, and I'll show you what their answers look like. Okay. Or I'll read to you what their answers look like so you can visualize how your answers need to look when you answer these questions. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the step-by-step process of creating your goals. Okay. All right. Step one, write down all of your descriptive goals. Okay. Your descriptive goals of I want to lose weight. I want to tone up. I want to have more energy. I want to fit in my jeans. I want to be able to wear shorts. I want to feel more confident. Whatever that is. Okay. Write down your descriptive goals. Okay. That's number one. Let me read you an example of somebody that wrote down descriptive goals. Okay. So her descriptive goals were I want to have toned thighs. I want to feel comfortable enough to wear shorts, dresses, and wear skirts without wearing dark pantyhose underneath. I want to minimize my cellulite. I want to fit into my jeans comfortably and easy to zip up. I want my arms to be toned and have some definition. And I want my obliques to be more defined. Okay. Those are descriptive goals. Okay. So step one, write down your descriptive goals. Okay. Step 2, turn your descriptive goals into long-term measurable goals. Okay. Now, you got to use that SMART acronym when creating goals, right? SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, right? Or relevant, I should say. Some people say realistic. It's relevant. Relevant is the R. Okay. Okay. So create SMART goals, create long term. Okay. We're looking at what you want to achieve at the end of the road. Okay. So we've got your starting point. Now we got to create where you want it to be. So turn those descriptive goals into measurable goals. Okay. So let me give you an example of what that is. So measurable goals are things like, I want to lose 30 pounds of fat. I want to lose 28 inches in my waist. Okay. That's what I mean by measurable goals. These are things that you can truly measure. Okay. So you can start off with just looking at your measurements and creating goals for each of those measurements. Okay. Which is what I'm going to suggest, just because that's a less advanced way of doing it. But essentially what you want to do is, when you go line by line from all your measurements. Okay. So you look at all your measurements: your fat mass, your lean body mass, your body fat percentage, your weight, your waist, your hips, circumference, your chest circumference, your thigh circumference. When you get all those measurements, then you can go line by line and create where you want those to be. Okay. So you write those down, you write your goals down. Now, when you finish writing all of those goals down, then you need to go back and look at your descriptive goals. Okay. If you were to achieve all of these things, all of these goals for your descriptive goals, or excuse me, for your measurable goals, okay, would you achieve your descriptive goals? Okay. So let me give you an example of somebody, the same person that I was telling you about, and how we created her descriptive goals, and how we used her body fat measurements and all the measurements that we had, and created these long-term measurable goals. Okay. So here we go. So her long-term physical goals: I want to lose 20 pounds of fat mass. Okay. And what I did is I put where she was starting and where she wanted to end up. Okay. So she was starting at 46 pounds of fat mass, and her goal was to get to 25 pounds of fat mass. Okay. Now, when you're writing your goals, you want to make sure that you're writing your goals in a way that motivates you. Okay. So, for example, if you can write down that my goal is to get to 25 pounds of total fat mass. Okay. That's one way to write it down. Okay. If you're starting from 45 pounds of fat mass, let's say that's your starting point. Okay. Well, you can say, hey, my goal is to lose 25 pounds, get down to 25 pounds of total fat mass. Right. Or you can say it in another way that's probably a little bit more motivating. I want to lose 20 pounds of total fat mass. Okay. So make sure you write your goals the way that you want it to, or the way that motivates you. Okay. And it'll make a little bit more sense when we go to circumference. Okay. So the next goal is, I want to gain 10 pounds of muscle mass. She's currently, and I put parentheses and I put what she was in, currently at 102. And the goal is to get to 110 or beyond in muscle mass. Okay. I want to decrease my body fat to 24%. I'm currently at 31%. Okay. I want to go back to a size 2, currently a size 6. Okay. That is a measurable goal. Okay. And we'll stop there. Okay. So that's how you turn all of these goals into measurable goals. Right now, I can go more on where we want her waist size to be, how many inches she wants to lose in her waist. We can go more into depth with all the stuff, but I think that's enough for right now. Okay. So we look at this and we say, okay, if you lost 20 pounds of fat mass, if you gain 10 pounds of muscle, if you drop to 24% body fat, and if you got down to a size 2 in clothes, okay, would that accomplish your descriptive goals of, I want to have toned thighs, I want to feel comfortable enough to wear shorts, wear skirts without wearing pantyhose underneath, I want to minimize my cellulite, I want to fit into my jeans comfortably and easy to zip up, I want my arms to be toned and have some definition, and I want my obliques to be more defined. If we accomplish those long-term physical goals, does that accomplish your descriptive goals? You got to make sure they match. Okay. If the answer is yes, then you created your long-term physical goals very, very, very well. Okay. All right. Perfect. So you have created your descriptive goals. Then you have created your long-term specific measurable goals. Okay. Now the third step, okay, super important, is to create a deadline. when are you trying to accomplish all of this by? Okay. So if we'll go back to what I always tell you, if you want to, if your goal is fat loss, which is this is what we're doing, okay, make sure that you are averaging 1 pound of fat loss a week and you put your goal date somewhere around that mark. Okay. So if you're trying to lose 20 pounds of fat, then you want to make sure that your goal date is at least 20 weeks away, which is about 5 months away, somewhere in that area. If you want to extend it to 6 months, 7 months, that's fine too. Okay. You don't have to set it at 1 pound of fat a week. Okay. But the fastest you want to lose is 1 pound of fat a week. Okay. And then calculate it. Okay. How many weeks is that? Okay. How many months is that? And that's about the fastest that you want to do it. Okay. But create a deadline and create a deadline that you cannot change. Create a deadline that you cannot move. Okay. And tell people, this is my deadline. Create an event out of it. Okay. If it's your birthday, create an event out of it. If it's the normal time that you do a family vacation, create an event out of it. Okay. But don't keep it silent. Don't not say anything to anyone because it's going to be so much easier to push it back. You need some form of accountability. So create a deadline of when you're trying to do all of this stuff. Okay. Perfect. That's how we're going to create our long-term physical goals, and you're going to create a deadline of when you're trying to do it. Okay. All right. And the last step in creating your goals, okay, is to create short-term goals. Okay. Now, your short-term goals can be created based on a 1 month basis, a 2 month basis, a 3 month basis, whatever the case may be. Okay. Whatever you consider short-term. Okay. Whenever I consider short-term for my clients, I consider it on a monthly basis. On a monthly basis, this is what we want to see. Okay. So create short-term goals of what you want to see. So if you are creating a short-term goal and that's 1 month goal, okay, then what you should say is every month, I want this to happen with all of my numbers. Okay. So you go back through all of your long-term goals of your measurable goals. Okay. And then you flip those into short-term goals. Okay. So let me show you exactly how we did this with this particular client. Okay. So let's go back to her long-term goals. Okay. Long-term goals: lose 20 pounds of fat, gain 10 pounds of muscle, get down to 24% body fat. So lose 7% body fat. Okay. And she wanted to do, and get down to a size 2 from a size 6. Okay. So those are her long-term physical goals. Then we said, okay, where do we need, what needs to happen on a monthly basis in order for this to happen? Okay. So again, this was going to be a 5 to 6 month goal is what we were doing. That was her deadline, about 5 to 6 months. Okay. So her short-term physical goals were that she needed to lose anywhere between 2 to 4 pounds of fat every single month. Okay. Now, if we just go to the fat mass, right? She's trying to lose 20 pounds of fat and she's trying to do it in 5 months. Okay. It's easy to say, actually, this was 6 months. She's trying to do it in 6 months. Okay. It's easy to say, I'm going to get 20 divided by 6, and that's the average that I should be seeing every month. But that's not true. Okay. So if that was the case, she'd be losing about 3.6 pounds of fat per month. Okay. But that's not the way that fat loss goes. Fat loss is not linear. It doesn't happen like that. Okay. So we set up her goals to be 2 to 4. Okay. As long as she was in that 2 to 4 range, okay, she was on the right track. We didn't want to set it right at 3.6 or whatever we averaged it out to. Okay. Because you're setting yourself up for failure if you have to hit that mark. Okay. So set a range. Okay. What's the lowest that you should lose and still be happy? Okay. In her case, as long as she lost 2 pounds of fat, she would still be happy. But we would really try to lose about 4 pounds of fat. That's really where we're trying to be. So we created that range of 2 to 4 pounds of fat per month. Okay. Then we said we wanted to gain anywhere between 1 to 2 pounds of lean body mass per month on average. Okay. And then we said we wanted to lose about 1 to 2% body fat every single month. Again, she's trying to go from 31 down to 24. So that's 7. Okay. So we're trying to lose 1 to 2% body fat every single month. Okay. And she wanted her clothes to start fitting better and looser and possibly going down a size every month, if not every other month. Okay. So we created her descriptive goals. We created her long-term goals with a deadline. And then we created her short-term goals of what should be happening every single month. Okay. Now, I know I just threw a lot at you guys, and I know that this is a pretty intense process, which is why so many people come and work with us as coaches, because we make this process so easy. And that's why our clients get results, because we go through this process and it's super intense. And this is just like step 1A. Like, we have a whole nother process that we go through, but we're nerds over here. So we'll do that. But if you're doing this on your own, this is a great place to start. Okay. Fernanda says she's always starting, but she just can't seem to continue going because she doesn't have the discipline. And that's normal, right? Self-discipline is not necessarily the most extreme thing that you know. Okay. A lot of people say, oh, I don't have self-discipline, right? And so they think they either have it or they don't have it. And they don't have it because they're trying to do these extreme things and they just aren't at that place yet. Okay. But we all have some type of self-discipline. We just need to have directed self-discipline. We need to have intentional self-discipline, and we need to have steps to our self-discipline. Okay. I'm sure most of us have a morning routine that we have, right? We wake up, we brush our teeth, we take a shower, we put our clothes on, and we have this routine that we go through, right? That is a form of discipline. Okay. Now, it's not extreme, so you probably don't count it as discipline. Okay. But it is a form of discipline. So if you have a routine anywhere in your life, okay, then you have discipline. Okay. Now we just have to say, well, what are the next steps that I can take that maybe are a little bit more advanced discipline? Okay. And then once you accomplish that, what are the next step that are a little bit more advanced discipline? And you just keep going. And eventually you work your way up to having extreme self-discipline for extreme things. Okay. But if you lack self-discipline right now, look at your life right now. And chances are you're going to see that you do have discipline, number one. And number two, maybe your definition of self-discipline is just too extreme and you need to lower your expectation level. And that might help a lot. I can tell you that most of my clients, when they come into me, they have this expectation that when they come into the program, they all say the same thing. Oh, I just need to know what to do. If I just have a plan, I'll do it right away. And I know that's complete garbage. That's not how it works. Okay. And they all feel like they're going to have the self-discipline to go in, get after it, and do it. Okay. And they come in and they expect to be perfect from day one, but I know they're not going to be perfect. Okay. So that's just not going to happen. Okay. Every client wants to be there in your mind. I get it, but your habits aren't at that place yet where you can demand that out of yourself. So what I demand out of my clients is I drop it down a little bit. I don't demand perfection. I demand 50% execution. I demand 60%, depending on where that client is starting from. Okay. So every client's going to have different demands. Every client wants to go gung ho, right? But I know most clients need to take that small little step. Okay. Now, if you were just to do the the 2 steps that I talked about, know your starting point. Okay. Know your end point. Okay. Which is going through creating your descriptive goals, turning that into creating long-term measurable goals, and then creating your deadline, but then creating your short-term goals. If you went through that process, okay, you are going to be set up better than most people. Okay. All right. So here are the bonus tips that will take that to a completely different planet. Okay. And I'm telling you, this is all mindset stuff. Okay. So number one, create your identity. Okay. And what that basically means is they did these studies. If you go, there's an awesome book. It's called Atomic Habits, and he talks about creating your identity. And they did a study of people accomplishing goals. They were doing goal setting. Okay. And the people that said, I want to be the kind of person that does this, okay, versus the people that said, I want to achieve this, okay, the people that said, I want to be the kind of person that does these things, okay, those people are the ones that actually got more results and accomplished their goals versus the ones that said, hey, I want to accomplish this, okay. So it's a great book. If you've never ever read it, man, it's one of my favorite books of all time. I've listened to it 3 times already. I do audiobooks, and it's freaking phenomenal. And I am not in any way getting any kind of commission if you buy his book. Okay. So it is just that awesome. Okay. So create your identity. The way you create your identity is by writing this statement down. I want to be the kind of person that blank. Okay. So it could be, I want to be the kind of person that exercises every single day. I want to be the kind of person that not only looks healthy, but feels healthy mentally. I want to be the kind of person that my friends look up to. Okay. I want to be the kind of person that my son looks up to, that he sees, oh my gosh, my dad is doing this. He can do this with his body. I can do that too. Okay. Write out what you want your identity to be and always start off with the very beginning. I want to be the kind of person that blank. Okay. And you can write as many sentences of that as you want. You can have a paragraph of that, but start with, I want to be the kind of person that blank. Okay. And go with that. So that's bonus tip number one. Create your goals, but create your identity, who you want to be. Okay. Bonus tip number two. This is a good one. Bonus tip number two. Look at your goals. Okay. Look at everything in your goals. Okay. And look at your long-term goals, look at your descriptive goals. You'll probably identify more with your descriptive goals. So look at your descriptive goals. Okay. Imagine yourself for a second, you accomplished all of that. Okay. Close your eyes, 5 minutes, spend time visualizing what it would look like when you accomplish all of this. Okay. How would you feel? What would you think? Well, how would you feel about yourself? What would you think about yourself? What do you think your peers are going to say, your coworkers, your family? Okay. Really imagine every single one of those things of what it will feel like to actually be at that place. How beautiful will life be? What would you do that you haven't done now? What are some things that you'd have more confidence to do? Okay. And imagine yourself doing those things. Okay. I had a great client. Her name was Beverly. Okay. She's one of my greatest success stories. She was 50 something years old, 53 years old, in fact. And she was over 200 pounds. She had been over 200 pounds her entire life. And we did this exercise. And one of the things that she wrote down that she wanted to do is she wanted to lose all of this weight, but the reason why is because she wanted to go live her life for the first time, because she had been heavy her whole life. She had never been able to exercise. She was always, the little fat kid in school, in high school. Okay. And she got teased all the time. So she wanted to be in great shape. Okay. She was well over 200 pounds. Okay. She lost, I can't remember exactly how much weight she lost, but she got all the way down to 150 pounds at 53 years old, and her life completely changed. And one of the things that she said, that when she wrote this down of what she would be doing, is she would be doing whitewater rafting, and she would be hiking in the mountains in California. And those are the two things that she's always wanted to do her entire life, but she could never do it. But because she was able to visualize it at the very beginning, she knew why she was doing this. She knew her purpose. When things got tough, she thought about, man, I'm going to be whitewater rafting. I want to do this. I've been wanting to do this since I was 15 years old. And here it is almost 40 years later. And she's finally working at it. No more. I'm going to get this done. And that is what allowed her to power through every time that she started to struggle. Okay. So imagine yourself, what it would feel like, what it would be like when you accomplish all of those goals that you wrote down. Okay. That's bonus tip number two. Bonus tip number three. Okay. Look at your goals. Imagine what you just imagined. Think about what you just thought about of the great place to be. Okay. Now, how would you feel if you went and you didn't accomplish any of this? How would you feel? And write all of that down. That's a powerful one. That is so powerful to do, because you need to see what happens if you don't continue down this path. Is it another 5 years of struggling with your weight? Is it another 5 years, 10 years of not feeling good about yourself? Is it another 15 years of not really pushing through and accomplishing the things that you want to do outside of fitness because of your lack of self-confidence, your insecurities about your weight? Okay. What is this keeping you from doing? Okay. When you can look at what it would look like, what would your life look like? How would you feel about yourself if you didn't accomplish any of this? That should light a fire under your butt to get you going and say, no, this is my destiny if I don't do all of these things. This is my destiny if I don't continue to work towards my goals. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up today's session on setting up your fat loss program and doing goal setting. I love this session. It's one of my favorite sessions to do with my clients. If you have any questions on how do you need to set your goals, if you have any questions on the IFM coaching program, just go to ifmcoaching.online and I'll be more than happy to schedule a call with you and go from there. If you want to contact me personally through DM, go ahead and contact me personally through DM. I'll be happy to talk to you and answer any questions that you have. Guys, it has been awesome. You guys are great. We'll see you next week.